Everyone hit the floor. Gunfire will have that effect on a crowded room. I hadn't been paying attention to the crowd in general when the enslaved security shut down the party. The only people I had been paying close enough attention to see any reaction was Sierra and her retinue, and Hammond. Hammond looked like a dog that had just been taken off guard and realised he'd been outnumbered while his back was turned. Sierra, she had paused, assessing the situation, seeing the reality of what was happening around her, and then got to her knees slowly, along with the rest of the guests. But while everyone else had been shocked, amazed, or frightened, her eyes didn't even twitch. Not a flinch from her as the guns went off. She didn't show a flicker of concern or fear as the bodyguard unloaded his own cannon into his mouth. The woman was cold as ice under all the smiles. I hunkered close to the ground, Reva by my side, my hand on her back, our eyes scanning the crowd, trying to take in everything, trying to formulate a plan. "That's really bad, isn't it?" Reva asked telepathically, looking at the dead bodyguard. The fact that he just turned that guy off like a switch and didn't even break a sweat? It's not a good sign, no. "He made the guy turn himself off." "I don't mean to be pessimistic, but we're kind of fucked." I had been hoping that maybe 10 was his upper limit for being able to control from a distance. This was the most I'd ever seen him run at once, but apparently he had more than enough bandwidth for 1 or 2 more. My other hope was that with so many in the crowd around us, he wouldn't notice me. Deep down, I knew my luck wasn't that good. Even if he couldn't see me easily, Reva drew attention through her green skin alone. He would notice her eventually. Options were limited, time was short. First things first, find a way to start getting people out. Reduce collateral damage. Reva turned to Sierra, her voice a whisper. "I don't suppose you have a contingency plan for this kind of thing?" Her eyes were like stone. "I have more security. They'll be here in seconds." I doubted it. This guy didn't leave loose ends. The stranger paced slowly from side to side. "I'm sure you are all intrigued as to why I've decided to crash your little party." He paused for dramatic effect. "This city is sick, it's hedonistic, it's infected. There is only one way to treat some sicknesses. Amputation of the infected area." He stopped his pacing. 2 of the enslaved security broke away from their positions to wade into the crowd, their guns sweeping back and forth as they hunted for someone. The guests were already quiet, but as the barrels passed over their positions, silence fell absolutely. At last, they closed in on a target, pulling a tall, elegant elf woman to her feet. I recognized her, Hera Las Toros, a property developer with her own construction company at her back, worth billions. She had been involved in numerous scandals of embezzlement and allegations of bribery at a state level. She struggled against their grip, screaming and attempting to lash out. She wrenched one of her arms free and caught one of the captors a blow across his face. He didn't even flinch. They wrestled with her for a moment, until, at last, they dragged her kicking and screaming onto the stage. The stranger ignored her, speaking loud over the tops of her screams, threats, and objections. "Here is one of the parasites now." The 2 security tossed Hera onto the stage where she sprawled and scrambled, then struggled to her knees, staring up at his face behind the helmet with defiance. "No time like the present." He reached out one gloved hand, pressing his forefinger to her forehead. Her eyes went wide in an instant. A soundless scream opened her mouth wide. Her lips went white. Smoke began to issue from her augments. Her limbs shuddered. Her eyes rolled back in her head. Blood trickled from her ears, eyes, and nose. It took seconds, but it felt like it took an eternity as we sat, stunned, terrified. Her body fell to the stage floor. With a nudge of his boot, as though she was trash in his path, he pushed her over the edge of the polished timber back into the crowd. 1 down. The enslaved re-entered the crowd. He resumed his pacing. Sierra cursed under her breath. Where the hell are my security? He's already taken them out, or locked them out. I caught her eye. She was still calm, mostly. I can't get a signal out, Hammond said. He's cut us off from the outside world. Don't worry, I whispered. I have a backup plan in case shit hits the fan. They all stared at me like I just declared the sky was pink. Shit hasn't hit the fan yet, boy? One of the rich arseholes said with as much venom as he could muster. My backup plan is very extreme. I'd rather not use it. I left it at that. I didn't want people to panic. Besides, I suspected it was too late to call it off now anyway. Care to share? Hammond hissed at me. I shook my head. You would only disapprove. He made to retort, but he was cut short as another bigwig was pulled from the crowd. A woman on the other side of the room stood up and screamed, Henry! The stranger snapped his fingers and pointed at her. Two more of the enslaved made to retrieve her as well. 2 for the price of 1, he called out joyfully over the panic. I turned back to Sierra. Is there any other way out of here apart from those doors? I motioned to the double doors behind me. Her eyes flicked to a section of wall. There was a pause as she considered giving up one of her many secrets. She thought about it for the briefest second, then gave in. Yes, there's a hidden door. It leads to a lower exit, a fire escape, or to a panic room. Good. Can you open it? She nodded. Yes, it's not on any of the plans or networks. Only I can operate it. What good will that do? The gold-domed elf shot back. We'll be gunned down in seconds. I gave him a look that would have shut up DJ Barry Arnold. There's 2 people here he can't control. If we make a distraction, you and Hammond get as many people out as possible. The couple had been thrown onto the stage. The stranger was bent low, speaking to them. I couldn't hear what he was saying, something egotistical and sadistic, probably. Flexing, making a point of some sort. Hammond grabbed my forearm, getting my attention. How do you expect to do anything worthwhile? There's an anti-violence field. You're not exactly equipped for combat. I've got someone working on the field. As for being equipped, I tested my punch dagger. It wouldn't activate yet. I looked out the corner of my eye at Reva, with her matching forearm shields, Hermes unit, and concealed Bowie knife. We're equipped enough to shake things up. We all looked back to the stage. The second and third victims fell off the edge into the crowd, their corpses smoking, still convulsing. I continued to test my punch dagger. Once it broke free, I knew Reva and I were clear to power up our speed units and start taking down the enslaved. We continued our telepathic conversation while we waited. Remember, these guys aren't paid thugs. He's controlling them against their will. Try not to kill them. Reva nodded and then shrugged. I'll do my best, but they're definitely going to feel it if they wake up tomorrow. We can replace limbs and mend bones, just no fatalities. She shot me a grin. Spoil sport. Fuck this for a joke. The fat man on the spider legs had been shaking with fear and rage this whole time, and he had only been getting worse. He was squatting as best he could, unable to sit like everyone else. I knew the look on his face, though. He was ready to snap. There was no talking this guy down. He was too far gone. Fuck you, Sierra. You brought us here. I hope you burn. He stood up, instantly drawing attention to our position, his legs extending to their full height to give him enough lift to scuttle across the huddled masses. Blast shields shot out from the cradle at his waist to block any shots from the integrated machine guns on the security yards. He charged the double doors with speed that did him great credit. It wasn't fast enough, though. It never would have been. I didn't know how he intended to get through those doors, and we never found out. He made it about halfway there when his legs froze. His arms flailed and he cried out in protest. Unhand me! Let me go! The stranger had one hand extended. Circles of green hieroglyphics rotated in front of his palm. Leaving so soon? The legs pivoted to face the fat man to the stage. The shields retracted to give everyone a clear view. And we were having so much fun. He sighed like a disappointed parent. Hamish Carver, everyone. Political candidate, media mogul, and corruption on 6 legs. Fuck you. You're nothing but a thug. A nobody with delusions of grandeur. He tilted his helmeted head, and I knew he was smiling under there. I could always tell. I could just feel it. And 10 machine guns. All 10 of the enslaved raised their barrels and trained them on their new target. Which is more than you have, apparently. Hamish Carvor was cut to ribbons in the crossfire. Chunks of flesh and artificial tissue flew into the air. Circuitry sparked and the legs were crippled as bullets wrecked the joints. The people around him sank back as blood flew, fearing for their lives from stray shots, shrapnel, or rebounds. But all they got was a chunky red shower. The gunfire abated at last. The silence was deafening by contrast. Everyone held their breath. Our new host threw up his hands and laughed as though he had just pulled off a magic trick. Ha ha ha! We make progress. Give the guy a whip and a top hat. He was loving this whole ringmaster routine. Tonight we cleanse this city. His voice went from jovial to almost gleeful to serious between sentences. Bring me another. The enslaved seemed to pick another one from the crowd at random, but I knew that face as soon as I saw it. It was the Honourable Travis Harper, Western Australia's State Premier. Travis Harper was no saint by all accounts. Hell, I would have arrested him. I would have arrested most of the arseholes in here if I had enough evidence to make it stick. The stranger was right. The city would have been better off without them, but not like this. Once again, the helpless victim was hauled onto the stage. The show was the same. It was horrific, and yet I couldn't look away. He was enjoying this way too much. I continued to test my punch dagger again and again. Error, error, error. The goons threw the body from the stage this time. The helmet turned slowly, picking his next victim. I wondered why, if he could command anyone, if he could enslave people without first contact, why did he use his flunkies to bring him the victims? But it wasn't about ease. It was about making a point. It was about instilling fear. My heart rate increased as the eyeless vision panned across our position, then stopped. Fuck. And look, if it isn't one of our false saviors, Sierra Tulamine, and some of her friends. All heads turned in our direction. The enslaved moved as one to close in on our position. And my old friend Hunter Whitlock. Please, stand up so the nice people can see the man who was meant to put me down. I got to my feet, slowly, hands in the air. Reva stayed low, keeping her head down, but one hand rested on my ankle, maintaining our link. I was wondering how long it would take you before you found me. I didn't need to speak very loud to be heard over the distance between us. The room was so quiet already. I could say the same to you. In the end, I decided to have a night out. Sierra wasn't lifted to her feet. She stood, still graceful, even in the face of a definite fate so close at hand. I waited for the guns to be leveled at me. They weren't. Each of the barrels stayed fixed on Sierra. I know you're not afraid for your own life, he said, not even paying attention to Sierra yet. So I think I'll keep you in check the only other way I can think of. One of the enslaved that still stood around the outskirts of the crowd pulled a young woman from what I assumed to be her mother's embrace and pressed the barrel of his weapon to her temple. Now, stay right there until I'm ready for you, like a good little soldier boy. The lady of the evening was led to the stage, not forced. She wasn't going to let them dictate to her, even in death. I couldn't help but be impressed, just a little. Her high heels clicked and echoed on the hard wood of the stage. She halted a couple of paces from the stranger. Her eyes like stone, her gaze fixed on the faceless visage. Hammond caught my eye and mouthed, "Now what?" I checked to make sure no one was watching us for a quick second. Same plan, just have to save her first, I whispered back. He frowned, but he wasn't going to push his luck with eyes on us now. I continued to test my limits. Engage, error, engage, error, engage, error. Fucking hell, Fia, what are you doing? This will not stand. Her tone was like ice, as though she was berating a child. I'd drop that attitude if I was you, Lady Tulamine. Engage, error, engage, error. On your knees. He commanded her, not overriding her system. She still stood, refusing to kneel. Engage, error, engage, error. I'll see you pay for this. He extended his hand. Palm open, green hieroglyphs began to materialize in the air, encompassing his hand. No longer. Engage, error, engage, error, engage! Success! We had no need for a spoken command. I wasn't going to draw attention to myself or Reaver. They would know soon enough. If I pushed myself, I could reach the girl before I ran out of my first burst of energy. Then the second one would take me to the stage, if I pushed myself. After that, all bets were off. I just hoped we were all getting out of here alive. But I knew the truth. Chances weren't good. Only one way to find out. My legs almost moved of their own accord. The world froze. The only things moving at the same time as me was Reaver. She lunged forward from her position on the floor, her athletic prowess granting her the dexterity to go from a prone start to a sprint. She reached the first enslaved in only a few steps and hit him so hard she launched him backwards into the air. I had told her not to kill them. They were innocents after all, taken against their will. With a swing like that though, I wasn't liking their chances. I was halfway to my target before the stranger noticed the smallest flicker in his hieroglyphs as he began to mentally change gears. By the time I reached my objective, I saw the tensing of muscles, the shift in the stance of the young woman's captor as he began to brace himself to follow the orders of his master and blow her away. I tackled her, one hand up behind her head to brace her from the whiplash, the other around her waist as I bore her to the ground. We tumbled and rolled and stopped against the wall. Reality snapped back, and the machine gun tore up the floor as it traced my trajectory back to my position. I brought up my arms in a wall between me and my attacker. The shields that had ruined so many good shirts tore apart the sleeves of the most expensive suit I had ever owned. I would have shed a tear if I thought I would have ever worn it again. The bullets weren't anything so hardcore as to be armor-piercing rounds. They scored the alloy of my shields, and I was rocked back from the force of the barrage, but none made it through. The girl behind me screamed. The crowd had burst into pandemonium as soon as they realized what had happened. Opportunists made for the exits, but there were still other enslaved. They were gunned down. I rushed forward, closing in even as he continued to unload round after round. Lashing out with one hand, I grabbed his forearm and brought my dagger up in a clean uppercut. My blade pierced his elbow, shorting out the weapon and causing him more than enough pain to break him free of the hypnotism of his master. A small part of me felt sorry for him, but I had no time to waste. I left him screaming, bleeding on the floor. My Hermes spun back up again and I disappeared from sight in every practical sense. But there was no doubt as to where I was heading. I moved faster than I ever had, pushing my limit, feeling the burn in my legs, the strain on my mind. The closer to the stage I got, the more I felt like my body was going to tear itself apart. Safe to say, I misjudged the distance. I couldn't risk another glance around for Reaver. I was picking my way through the crowd, doing my best to maneuver between the guests as they stood frozen as obstacles in my path, put there to vex me. In moments like this, they say the world slows down and you notice the little things. Well, technically, the world had slowed down. But I did notice something. No one had drawn any weapons. Some of the bodyguards here must have some aggressive mods. Shit, you'd expect even some of the higher class guests to be rocking something. But not one shot had been fired, no blades drawn. Fia hadn't lifted the restriction of the anti-violence field. She had added us to the unrestricted list, same as the security. That was why it had taken so long. She knew what kind of pandemonium would break loose if everyone started firing off at once. Fia, Reaver, and I had suspected the stranger might try something like this. Fia had needed me to get inside the building and use me as a hub to then get inside the network. Sierra's apartments had been too well protected from the outside. Despite the fact that Fia could have got in eventually, this had been faster. She had orders to initiate Plan A as soon as I was cut off. By then, she would be inside the system and she wouldn't need me anymore. Plan B, though, part of me hoped she wasn't already at Plan B. I felt stretched. My reactions felt sluggish. I felt like I was lagging. Even though I was deep in the speed beyond speed, I felt like I was moving through water. Moving between the bodies, vaulting some, ducking under arms, all made my path twice as long. This was how Reva must have felt when she saved my life down in the Reaper's garden. I could see the telltale blue smoke begin to issue from the fabric of my suit pants at the knee and the hip joints of my legs. Only a few more meters, just the home stretch, and then up onto the polished timbers. My spine began to burn, my eyes watered. I lunged the last meter, my foot disrespecting the dead as I used the bodies of the victims to elevate my path onto the stage. They shifted and rolled under my weight, but I was gone before the makeshift steps could collapse under my shifting weight. I wished I could see the look on his face as I blurred back into the visible world. My punch dagger extended before me, my arm outstretched like some kind of budget superhero. Sierra had backed off a few steps in the intervening time, as I had wasted precious seconds taking out the security guard. The stranger had been advancing on her, reaching for her, his hand encased in the green light. As I appeared, mid-air at his side, he turned that faceless helmet towards me, just as I collided with him. No funny quips, no threats, just blood, sweat, and steel. My dagger sunk in as deep as it would go. My aim had been the best I could manage, and I took him in the shoulder. His cry of pain was like the sweet music to my ears. I landed on top of him, ripped my blade free and plunged it deep into his other shoulder. I could only go for the soft spots around the body armor that rested under the suit. His voice echoed in my mind as well as in my ears, another blissful cry of pain. My free hand grasped the chin of the helmet. I tried to wrench it off, but the chin strap held fast. A quick bit of blade work would fix that, and if I cut his throat doing so, well, it was a risk I was willing to take. I didn't get a chance. A body impacted me from upstage, and we rolled over and over, each of us trying to get the top position. I won, pinning my assailant to the floor, on the edge of the stage. It was one of the enslaved. His face was impassive as I swung my fist as hard as I could and cracked him across the jaw. With precious seconds, I tossed up, unleashing a system reset on him, but it would take too much out of me, and I needed all the power I could muster. Another body hit me from behind, then another. I was being weighed down, the guy under becoming crushed, but still sinking fists into my ribs as I was flattened on top of him. We were all too close, a mess of limbs entangled. They couldn't bring the extended lengths of their barrels to bear on me. Not that it mattered. Pain blossomed all over my body as the beating continued. Despite my subdermal armor, the blunt force impact from their mechanically enhanced fists was more than effective. I looked around. Blood trickled down my face. My head had been hit with something. The vision in one eye was blurred. I could just see Reva trying to push through the crowd to get to me. She was yelling something. I couldn't hear it through the ringing in my ears. Barely, I could make out Sierra and Hammond. They'd gotten her secret door open. The crowd bulged at the opening as those that had seen it flocked to freedom. My eyesight began to swim, my vision blurring even further, but not from the blood in my eyes. The trauma to my head. It must have been significant. Ringing in my ears cut out all the immediate sounds. Then the last thing I wanted to see dropped into my line of sight. That tack helmet, with its scratched paint, blank patches of metal where sensors had been ripped off. Blood splattered the chin where I'd grabbed him. It had been smeared into the shape of a demented grin across the bottom half of the panel. I ground my teeth, one last surge of strength to reach out and cut the damn helmet from his shoulders. "You have no idea what you've done," he spat at me. "I was so close." I switched to my Cyphers sight for the first time that night, hoping that at such close range I might be able to make out some kind of detail of the face beneath. But it was all too well shielded. He had known what he was doing when he had chosen that attire. The impression of a cheek, the hint of an eye, it was all I got. "Killing unarmed people in cold blood. What a fucking hero you are." He drew back. "You have no idea the falsities you have been fed. These people have bled the city dry. She deserves no less. You should be on my side. I spared you, hoping you would see sense eventually." "I'll pay one day. I'll do it myself if I can, but not your way." I sensed a sneer. "You're their dog. You can't take them out. No hunter is that far beyond repercussion." I might be their dog, but at least I'm no murderer. He paused and laughed. No, no, you are so much more efficient than a murderer. Hunter, killer, assassin. It's all the same. His hand, already prepared to blast magic into Sierra, now reached out and grasped me by the face. I really didn't want to have to do this. Power shocked me, like I was being lit up from the inside. I screamed. I hadn't been ready for it. I tried to rally, tried to put up some kind of resistance. My thoughts coalesced, the pain eased off, but it still radiated through my body. Intense, immeasurable. I can do more than just fry you. He spat with venom. The green light around his hands changed rotation. The hieroglyphs altered. My vision went blank. The pain ramped up. Then, just when I couldn't take any more, the blackness turned to sight. The pain abated. The view of a room I hadn't seen in decades. My old bedroom. I was a teen. I'd just woken up to the sounds of broken furniture, smashing glass, the sound of a primal howl. Mum! I ran into the hall, my worst nightmare coming true. My mother, Mum, her ravaged body lay in front of me, torn to ribbons. I couldn't move. I couldn't get to her. My feet wouldn't move. I kept crying out to her, to anyone. Dad! Marcus! Tess! No one came. I was the only one. Was I the only one left? Where were they? I couldn't move. But I had made it to her. I remembered that moment. I remembered what had actually happened. I had held her, the blood soaking my clothes, her last breath on my skin, my tears mixing with hers as she reached for my face. My body dropped away from the world. My mother's body disappeared. The scene shifted. Another room. I remembered all too well. An office in a far-off country. My first mission. My first kill. It had been messy. The blood, there was so much more than I remembered. My head throbbed. My heart tried to break out of my chest, refusing to slow its beat. My gun lay on the other side of the room, my knife not far from it. My hand had been cut off at the wrist, and I clutched a bloody stump. My target. My target was sprawled in a pool of her own blood and mine. A shard of glass from the window embedded in her eye, lancing into her brain. She had been a wannabe dictator. She had done terrible things to her people, killing thousands on a whim. It didn't make it easier. My father's words rang in my head. Don't make it personal, kid. A target is just a body that doesn't know it's dead yet. A shiver ran down my spine. I'd done it. I'd made it. The scene blurred like coloured smoke blown away with the wind. It swirled and then coalesced into thick, grey smoke. And ash. Flames, sparks, the sounds of motors trying desperately to turn over, the screams of my friends, all of them just outside my reach. We'd just been boasting about our success. We had been laughing about how good we were at taking lives. Then the explosion had rocked the craft, blown out the whole side. I'd lost control, lost my link to the piloting system. I'd failed to stabilize us. I'd failed to sense the missile. The scene seemed to drag for hours, hours locked in the same helpless fall, watching them burn, watching myself suffer. This wasn't real. This was hell. But I'd been here before. I'd made it through. I'd come out the other side. I could do it again. He was trying to break my mind. He was trying to manipulate my memories and traumatize me. Enough of me remained to know the truth. A small part of me was rebelling. It withdrew into the back of my mind to fight back as I stood screaming for my father, only steps from my dying mother, as I stood over my first kill, as I watched my friends die. My mind burned white hot. He was good. He was better than I could ever be, but I had something he didn't. I had been through worse. I had willpower to dwarf his. He was paper thin inside. I was stone. I forced my will to manifest. I pushed back against his magic. Pain like lightning in my mind, straining my consciousness. It was spread thin, stretched over a gaping void, trying desperately to hold together, until I snapped back all at once. A shockwave blew out from me. Travelling down the connection to the stranger, it slammed into him, a telepathic blow strong enough to throw him from his feet. He fell backwards, sprawling on the stage. The beating had continued while I had been out. My whole body was ready to give in. He'd scrambled to his feet, faster than I'd hoped for, heaving breaths, recovering despite my best effort. He was shaking though, shivering, twitching. I'd broken something in him at last. "Fine!" He screamed. He reached into his jacket. His gloved hand came back holding a pistol. "We do this the old-fashioned way." He strode forward, powered by rage. It was small caliber, but at close range, it was big enough. He came within inches of me, leveling the gun at my face. The team of enslaved held me fast. I looked down the barrel to where the small cone of lead that would wipe all of this away sat nestled. This wasn't the way I'd planned to go, but at least I could say I'd tried to make a difference. At least I fought back. I gave it my best shot. I had tried. I looked all around me, searching for any last-ditch option of freedom. They're right. Time does seem to slow when you're this close to death. You see so much in such a short span. Reva was caught on the floor. She was being mobbed by the other enslaved. She was doing her best, but he wasn't letting them feel pain, and they kept her at bay. I hoped against hope that she got out. Just turn and run, baby. Don't waste your time. Hammond and Sierra had done what they could. Most of the people were out now, those not gunned down in the panic. Good. I was still seeing through my Cyphers sight. All of these glorious, vibrant colours. My eyes rolled and I looked up to the heavens. My other sight, unhindered by blood or dim natural vision, fixed on a shape high above us, up over the glass ceiling, high above. It was hammering on the glass. "Any last words?" A bloody grin to match the one on his helmet spread across my face. "You took too long." Glass rained around us, thick, sharp, in huge chunks. The sound, though, was outdone by the splintering crash as a huge, muscular shape landed beside us. Fur, cut and bloody from the glass, covered a hulking body. It was vaguely humanoid, but more beast than anything else. Muscles akin to a troll's, but more defined, leaner. It was covered in short brown fur with a whip-like tail, ears pointed, teeth more so. Fear. She had made it. She was hungry. She was pissed. I had never been more thankful to see my sister fully transformed. I could see it in her eyes. There was just enough of her in there to nudge the beast in the right direction. She wasn't in control, though. She was just making suggestions. The stranger stood frozen, anchored to the spot in shock and fear. No, not fear. Concentration. The green rings of symbols encasing his arms. He reached out, risking his life to lay a hand on her. I laughed. It was ragged. It was choking in blood, but it was real. "You can't control her," I coughed. Motherfucker was too arrogant to listen. I tried to tell him. Shapeshifters were too chaotic. Fucking idiot. 6 rapid shots rang out. He unloaded everything he had in his pistol into her chest. Wrong. She howled. It was deep, pained, and a little bit beautiful all at once. It was a primal howl that ran a shortcut to the base of your spine and made your legs go weak. It made you think of your ancestors being hunted by wolves across a frozen tundra. This time, I could feel the fear radiating off of him. In one swift motion, fear lashed out, her claws cutting through cloth, Kevlar, and flesh. The stranger stumbled backwards as she opened his chest, one hand raised in a pointless attempt to fend her off. The other clutched at his chest, blood running through his fingers. She moved like lightning, advancing on him, reaching out and wrapping one vicious-looking hand around his neck. Then, opening her jaws wide and towering over him, she leant forward and snapped them back together, closing on his head. The helmet shattered, crushing the skull underneath. She tore the loose fragments of helmet from the crown of his head and buried her mouth in the raw opening. It was like the top had been cut off a boiled egg. As his head was destroyed, a psychic shockwave blew outwards from him. No one but me saw it. I wasn't sure if anyone but me felt it. It left my skin buzzing, my ears ringing. Fear tore flesh from bones and grey matter from the shell of his helmet. She ripped chunks from him, swallowing them whole. Then, as quick as it started, it was over. She tossed his lifeless, shredded corpse aside. It tumbled in the air like a rag doll and landed, twisted, bloody, a mess. Free from their master's control, the enslaved security that had encased me in a pile of bodies tried to remove themselves. But all that happened was they passed out, falling off the stage. One of the side effects of being puppeted, unconsciousness soon followed after. I rolled onto my back, looking through my own sight, up at the bloody maw of my sister. She was done with him, her attention span short. A snarl rippled the air between us as she bent down to inspect her next potential meal. My hand reached inside my jacket, tentatively. It came out holding a short, shiny steel cylinder. I pointed it at her chest, as best I could. I depressed the button on the side, and my vision finally cut out. The last thing I saw was her jaws, wide open, right over my face. Night, sis. Thank you for listening to Cyphers Edge. Subscribe so as not to miss future episodes. New episodes uploaded every second Saturday. Script and narration by JJ Brandis. Music was provided by Cale McLeish. Copyright JJ Brandis 2025.